Good morning, folks. It's Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Magnetic Reversal News, and Shinrin-yoku, bringing you a grand solar minimum update. Sunday, September 18th, around 10 a.m. Mountain Time 2022. You're looking at Super Typhoon Nanmadol. It has made landfall at Kagoshima, and it's moving north. It's going to rafe the Japanese islands for quite a few days. And that might have set off a 6.9 magnitude earthquake in Taiwan that we predicted yesterday. And there was some damage, and that's the big story. Building collapses after strongest in a series of earthquakes shakes Taiwan. 4 people were trapped in the wreckage, 400 tourists stuck on a mountainside. Keep calm. It's boom time. Well, it looks like this wasn't a very deadly earthquake, which is good news. It was only magnitude 6.9. It's been downgraded to 6.8. And this strong earthquake, clearly the pre-shock was the 6.4 yesterday. The strong aftershock shook much of Taiwan on Sunday, toppling a 3-story building and temporarily trapping 4 people inside. Also stranding about 400 tourists on a mountainside and knocking part of a passenger train off its tracks. There were no immediate reports of serious injuries, and that is just amazing. Now on with the weather. A massive storm is battering Alaska's coastal towns. Residents are evacuated as widespread flooding is reported. We warned about the storm yesterday, and sure enough, the storm surge was real. Take a look at this. Flooding as seen in Golovin, Alaska. That was one of the hardest hit areas. Major flooding in Golovin this morning. Water is still expected to rise 1 to 2 feet. So we could just take a look at some of these pictures over on the tweet box. What we're going to see is a storm surge that essentially is, battering the town in the middle of the night. That's got to be pretty scary. So, the remnants of the hurricane is now causing major flooding in Alaska. Very angry seas in Nome this morning. So that's ongoing. This storm is going to be pummeling the area, bringing heavy rains, wind, and snow for the next day or so. So we'll give you some follow-ups on that as we get the numbers. Now, widespread rain is also likely Sunday into early next week in Central California with a side of smoke. A cooling trend through this weekend will bring below normal temperatures, continuing all through next week to the west. Now, the mainstream media is only going to be talking about where it's hot in the center of the country. So there is that. Now, this cooling trend is going to bring widespread shower chances last night into early next week with possible afternoon thunderstorms. And here we can see the mosquito fire. Smoke from the mosquito fire could bring locally low visibility Sunday morning to some areas, especially like Lovelock. They look like they're completely saturated in the snow. There are the cool temperatures up in the Sierras as low as, did I just see a 50 in Mineral? Wow. This morning it was 37 degrees here, and we had some plant damage, the shortest growing season ever, just around 65 days. Wind gusts to 20 miles per hour through much of the state, and there's your precipitation potential up to 2 inches, 3 inches in Grass Valley, 1 inch in South Lake Tahoe, 2 inches in Sacramento. So flooding potential exists, especially near burn scars, so heads up if you're in that region. Now let's take a look at the smoke map. Well, here we are looking at North America as a whole, and it's quite smoky up in Canada, and we've got some wind blowing clear air through the Four Corners region. The Four Corners region seems to be the clearest air in the entire United States. The most hazy air from the mosquito fire seems to be centered around Pittsburgh to Philadelphia, as well as all of eastern Ohio, Virginia, West Virginia. You guys are smothered. Western Michigan, hello. You are covered in the haze from the mosquito fire. And then the smoke is only going to be localized north of Sacramento and northern Nevada. Most of Oregon and southwestern Idaho also covered in the smoke. So if you know why you are coughing or can't breathe, it's probably because of the haze, the smoke haze. And as winter arrives on Mount Washington in the smoke at 6,288 feet, take a look at the Mount Washington summit sign. It is absolutely Arctic in the northeast. And these are this is a sign of the times, sign of things to come. A very short winter, or I mean a very short summer now here, especially in the west. They're going to have a wake-up call this week. As what we've seen over the summer is amazing in Death Valley. It took a triple whammy from stormy weather, and that was multiple flooding events that are now still keeping Death Valley closed for the most part. The entire area is shut off to humans, except one road. So that's pretty amazing. We had multiple events causing flooding, and they were fixing up the place, but with rangers and road crews coming up for air early this week, the rains came yet again. And last Tuesday on September 13th, spotty but heavy rains descended on Death Valley once again. California 190 west of the park, which had been open for a few scant hours, suddenly closed again. The damage this time was far more serious than what had been visited earlier. So, amazing damage in Death Valley. And as of Thursday, highway officials had no idea when the roads would reopen. What does this mean for visitors to Death Valley? Well, most paved roads into the park are closed or impassable. The only route into the park is from the east via Death Valley Junction and California 190. And visitors can only drive to Dante's View, Zabriskie Point, the oasis of Death Valley, Furnace Creek Visitor Center, and Campground. And so it's very limited to where you can get to. It's been a very exciting week, and here we can see some of those waterfalls cascading down in Death Valley, the driest place on Earth. Endless summer. Here is more of the propaganda. Heat wave building over the nation's heartland with record-breaking temperatures. The only problem is they're obfuscating kind of from the truth here.
48, right? It's your Saturday. I want you to get out there and enjoy it.
Let's take a look what happens
here. Weather pattern
here.
that will be changing through the weekend into next week, and it's all because of the big age. High-pressure dome.
So here we have a temperature divide where it's going to be record cold in the west, and this is the only area that the media is going to focus on, this high pressure. It's called Indian summer, and it's still summer. So I guess it is endless because it's still summer. What a bummer. The mainstream media really loses the mark on forecasting the weather for people correctly so that they can have a balanced opinion about what is actually happening on Earth. Now, what we do know is happening in the tropics is Fiona has kicked it up a notch. In just the last few hours, it's the wind speed, the maximum sustained winds has risen by 10 miles per hour. It's just short of a Cat 1 hurricane, which it will probably turn into over the next few hours. There it is. Hurricane Fiona just happened as we were speaking. And there we are as of advisory number 17. Hurricane Fiona is in effect just south of Puerto Rico. And I'm sure it is wreaking havoc on the island. Now, hurricane conditions are expected across portions of Puerto Rico today and in portions of the Dominican Republic tonight and Monday. Tropical storm conditions are occurring across the U.S. and British Virgin Islands as we speak and will reach the Dominican Republic later today and tonight. Heavy rains from Fiona will continue across Puerto Rico through tonight and occur over the Dominican Republic later today into Monday, with some areas looking very scary, picking up feet of rain here in the southeast Puerto Rico. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the people. Get out of harm's way. If you're in a river valley, move to high ground and heed my warnings because it's not going to be good. Now, did you know that most deaths from tropical disturbances, tropical storms and hurricanes don't come from the winds and the eye wall and the hurricane itself? They come afterwards from the flooding rains that rise rivers and carry whole villages away. So that's the warning there. And here's the track. We actually have two tracks. This is the 6 a.m. track and then the 12 noon. And you can see here that there is some movement here. This is the most recent track. It looks like this baby is headed up to Newfoundland, and it's not going to affect Europe. So that's good news for Europe. Bad news for Bermuda, maybe, which is sitting right here in the path. So when we have more detailed analysis, we'll bring it to you. But that's the latest. Rain, wind, and flooding across Alaska and Puerto Rico. Several severe weather situations for the mid-Mississippi Valley. You can see here almost nothing marked on the map. But there is a long-duration storm surge, damaging winds, and heavy rainfall is going to be occurring across western Alaska, continuing through today, and for Puerto Rico and nearby islands. Fiona is strengthening, is now a hurricane, with high impacts from flooding, mudslides, and dangerous wave action expected, especially in southeast Puerto Rico. So heads up there. Severe thunderstorms with a few tornadoes are possible for the mid-Mississippi Valley later today, as the heat returns for the plains and the Mississippi Valley, and that's going to pop up those dangerous potential storms. Now, what we're looking at here is the precipitation potential just for the next few days, which is going to show that flooding threat for Northern California with up to 4 to 5 inches in many areas, including near Tahoe. And take a look. This precipitation is not going to be just limited, the flooding precipitation to Northern California. In my neck of the woods, right here in southwest Colorado, it is going to be a deluge with up to 6 inches of rain predicted in the mountains, and that's going to run down into the valley. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here through Thursday or Friday. It's certainly going to be moist in our neck of the woods. Now, strong earthquake hits southeastern Taiwan. Buildings collapse, but almost no one is seriously injured, and that is amazing news. So what we have is a train carriage derailed, 4 rescued from a collapsed building. Tsunami warnings were canceled. The chip foundries are unaffected, and more than 600 trapped by blocked mountain roads. That's just about it. It could have been much, much worse. And I'm sure much worse is happening right now on the island of Japan, as it issued a rare special warning as violent Typhoon Nanmadol, well, it doesn't approach Kyushu, it is right over top of it. Millions told to evacuate, and hopefully they got out of harm's way. Here's the current position of the storm, centered right over land. Central pressure at 940, maximum sustained winds near the center, 85 knots. Maximum wind gusts at 120 knots. So this baby is blowing down some structures. Here's an amazing visual of the storm as it moves up and through. This is 4 a.m. It's kind of interesting. So I'll leave you links to this interactive map if you want to follow along with Super Typhoon Nanmadol as it wreaks havoc across the Japanese islands. It's a fantastic tool. This is Zoom Earth Storms Nanmadol. Now, earthquake rattles New York. The 12th earthquake in the Northeast over the last 30 days, and we've been keeping a close eye for at least half a decade on the activity in the East Coast, the Appalachian Fault, and the New Madrid. And this, we should be taking note of this. So not only were there 12 earthquakes over the last 30 days in the Northeast, but about a half a dozen at the New Madrid. So that's about 20 quakes this month in those fault zones, and this could be a slight uptick. So we'll keep a close eye on it for you as things develop, because we know we're waiting for the big one. And there it was, the biggest one in the last 24 hours, a 6.9 in Taiwan. This is following the 6.4 yesterday, and this was at a shallow depth on land, and thankfully, very few people were injured. No other quakes of note, which is good news. We have enough to talk about. Worldwide Volcano News Update. All volcanoes are acting quite well. The one thing not acting well is our sun, but it is acting well in one way. We're dodging the solar flares. How long can we keep dodging solar storms? Well, departing sunspot AR 3098 unleashed 5 M-class solar flares as it was going around the edge of the sun this weekend. The last 2 when it was completely out of view. So these must have been big ones off the backside. The biggest was an M7.9, not M8, so I don't know why they're reporting it as M8. It was not. You can see it did not reach the M8 threshold here on the graph. So they're lying here at spaceweather.com. For what reason, I have no idea. But because AR 3098 was not Earth-facing, all of the flares were muted in their effect, and none produced Earth-directed CMEs, meaning none of this is geo-effective. And add them to the list of dozens of misses since August. We just had 12 M flares from probably the same sunspot a week ago miss us completely as well. So this is good news on the grid down scenario front. But what it means is that, well, something is brewing. And when it will unleash on Earth, anyone's guess. We have a coronal hole stream now that appears to have coupled with us. We've got the speed increasing, the density pumped up first, then the speed. Very limited phi angle shift, so we could get up into maybe minor geomagnetic instability, KP4 today. We'd see it's unsettled currently the past 24 hours. But we have another formerly large sunspot group, AR 3089, which was last seen on September 6th, is just about 2 days away from turning back into view off the southeast limb. And it remains to be seen just how active the region is or how many sunspots are visible. But we could just play the video and see. So here we are over at SDO, A1A, 171 angstroms, and we can see that departing sunspot that shot off 4 of those M flares as it departed, and you can see that activity still continuing. There's another M flare, and another. And here is the spot in question that's coming in, and it looks pretty feisty. Let's just pause that in there. Jesus. So that is what's coming in right there. Take a look. Look at these huge arcs of plasma. Very similar to the last spot, which is turned away. So it could be some interesting activity here over the next few days. So 2 days to visibility, 2 days to geo-effective, and then 5 days of fun. That's what's coming at us. Buckle up. China discovered a new type of moon crystal that might lead to limitless energy. Now, this could be a game changer, and China could literally drive the movement to save the Earth. Could you imagine that? China has discovered an intriguing moon crystal made of a previously unknown material that contains helium-3. Let's take a look at this crystal. Let's take a good look at it. There it is. Holy macaroni, looks fantastic. Looks isometric. With the main axis there. It's very similar to quartz. One of the primary ingredients found in the moon crystal is helium-3. And they've named this mineral, the new mineral, Changsite. Changsite Y was discovered from a moon sample retrieved by China's Change 5 probe, making China the third country to discover a new mineral on the moon. And according to China's Atomic Energy Authority, one of the primary ingredients on the moon crystal is helium-3, which scientists believe could be a stable fuel source for nuclear fusion reactors. However, this ingredient is exceptionally scarce on Earth. But because it seems so prevalent on the moon, harnessing it from the lunar surface could make nuclear fusion reactors more viable for future power creation. We might even just make the moon a power station and beam that energy to Earth. How about them apples? Thank you, Changsite. Here comes Mars. The red planet will soon offer its best view until 2031. Now Mars is coming. And if you have a telescope, you want to make the most of this opportunity in the coming months. Why? Because Mars is the only planet whose surface we can see in any detail from Earth. And it's now moving towards the best viewing position it will provide us until the year 2031. So, assiduous planet watchers have already begun readying their telescopes. And if you haven't seen it, it will be well worth looking for this week, even though you'll have to wait until after midnight to look. So get your telescope, get your binocs, and go check out Mars and see what you can see on the surface. At the same time, we have Jupiter to reach opposition. This is the closest approach to Earth of Jupiter in 70 years. What could go wrong? Stargazers can expect excellent views of Jupiter the entire night of Monday, September 26th, when the giant planet reaches opposition. And from this viewpoint of Earth's surface, opposition happens when an astronomical object rises in the east as the sun sets in the west, placing the object and the sun on opposite sides of Earth. Now, Jupiter's opposition occurs every 13 months, making the planet appear larger and brighter than any other time of the year. But that's not all. Jupiter will also make its closest approach to Earth in the last 70 years. And this happens because Earth and Jupiter do not orbit the sun in perfect circles. Yes, they're ellipses, meaning that the planets will pass each other at different distances through the year. Now, Jupiter's closest approach to Earth rarely coincides with opposition, which means this year's view will be extraordinary and clear. And at its closest approach, Jupiter will be just 365 million miles away. And here we can actually see a photo snap of Jupiter and at least 3 of its moons. Did you know how many moons Jupiter has? It could be 80. Many scientists think Jupiter has up to 79 moons, and I believe 53 are named. That's a lot of moons. That's almost a moon boom. Now, frozen in time, 3,300-year-old burial cave from Ramses II, completely pristine and untouched, found at a popular beach. And it is filled with amazing relics that are 3,300 years old. They haven't been looted, they haven't been pillaged.
13 בספטמבר 22, השעה 11:40.
It just looks like a treasure trove.
במהלך עבודות בגן לאומי פלמחים, בחוף פלמחים, עבודות של פטישון, נפער פתח של מערה מהתקרה, אנחנו ירדנו למטה, ומה שנתגלה בפנינו זה הממצא המדהים.
Now, what we should glean from this is a few things. All these vessels were once standing upright, so there had to be a massive earthquake or some earth-moving event to tumble these in the last 3,300 years. So that's a very interesting thing that we can notice there. These were all arranged very nicely, and you can see that they're now all toppled.
מדהים הזה. כמות גדולה מאוד
Even the larger
של כלים
urns.
תמימים. יש פה גם עצמות בקערות. אנחנו נדע כמובן להפעיל.
And so I can imagine these were all arranged in such a way that
ש-
there were little offerings in the bowls surrounding each urn, etc. So, and maybe the ashes of some people are in those urns, but it's anyone's guess. And look at that, how they found this. Just amazing. I wish I found it. That's for sure. So amazing discoveries still happening day after day, and we're reporting on them here. We're reporting on them over at Magnetic Reversal News. Join us. Now, have you ever seen a white tree? We're going to end up with this, some permaculture or orchard basics. People not only paint trees white, but sometimes they wrap them with white paper in a little coil around the bark. And if you're not a plant, lawn, or garden enthusiast, you might have no idea what's going on here. But it's in fact used in places like where I live, where there's extreme temperature fluctuations in the winter and there's very bright sunlight. You can get something on your fruit trees or orchard plants called sun scald. And when that sun is low in the sky and directly facing your tree, if there's no snow to cover it, it will burn. And sun scald is no joke. It will kill your entire orchard. So all you have to do is paint the sun-facing side white, or the entire tree white, the area of sun scald, or wrap it in some protective paper. So that's why people paint trees white, so that they don't get the sun scald and die. And that's a boom to knowledge. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance in a dystopian world where you tune into YouTube and the Oppenheimer Ranch Project for facts. Throw your TV out the window because it's nothing but a propaganda box. Subscribe to the channel, share this with like-minded people, become a Patreon, support the work we do. We love you. And that's a boom.